Hello, and welcome back to Intentionally Living with Eli. I think the name still might be a work in progress, but either way, it's definitely a start, and it's definitely what we're using, and we're gonna run with that. But yeah, definitely excited. Whoever came back, whoever decided to tune in to the first episode, appreciate you very much. Got a lot of positive feedback, got a lot of constructive criticism. Very much looking forward to applying that. From here on forth on to the next episodes, and just really looking to grow. So if anyone has any feedback, anything they want to get back, anything they took away, definitely feel free to reach out. But yeah, I'm very excited for today for episode 2. Definitely something new. I had kind of already been talking about it with like promoting on my Instagram and my TikTok with cold and hot exposures, different scenarios, and definitely excited to talk about it today. Very excited to kind of spread the knowledge I've learned and the information I've gathered, and definitely excited to hopefully hear back, and hopefully anyone, even if it was just one person, was able to take away from this and it had an impact on. So definitely let's get right into it. I don't have a title for today's episode, but I definitely will have it once I upload it. But I'm thinking right now on something like intentional homeostasis, and how to respond to bring your body and mind back to a comfortable state, and something along those lines. And the reason I want to talk about that today, for those who don't know, the definition of homeostasis is basically just a neutral, kind of comfortable, balanced state in which the body, depending on internal or external factors, that can cause the body to either elevate in certain areas, in certain concentrations, in certain things, or the body to lose its concentration, kind of de-escalate and decrease. The body, in response, the immune system starts to fight whatever it is, usually like when we're sick or like we're outside, we're in cold temperatures, we're in hot temperatures, any other thing, maybe we got cut, maybe we had an accident, stuff like that. In several areas, just the immune system responding is a form of homeostasis, just to bring it to its most comfortable state. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today, and I'm excited to get into it. So I wanted to start with the definition of stressors, because I feel like the reason our body wouldn't be in its most comfortable state would be due to a stressor, an internal or external stressor, and factors that came into play that caused the body to respond in a certain way, and essentially cause this new and uncomfortable state that the body is currently in. And I think it's so important that we realize just the way the body works and how this crazy functional, unique, developed, advanced system that we have in our body. Just the way the body responds to all these type of factors, our mind and our lives also respond to the factors like internal, external factors and stressors that come along the way. And this can be it can take any shape, any form, any size. But definition, just right off the bat, the definition of a stressor is actually any event, force, or condition that results in physical or emotional stress. Stressors may be internal or external factors that require adjustment or coping strategies from the affected individual. And just right off the bat, that kind of just really summarizes exactly what I want to talk about today, and how through us being exposed to these internal, external factors, we have to have a strategy or some type of adjustment that we need to make and that we're able to make in response to these factors, so to essentially eliminate them and be able to cope with them and deal with them in a more effective, more efficient manner. And this can be anything, like factors, internal, external stressors can come in forms of work, family, friends, relationships, school, um, loved ones, significant others, loss of loved ones, loss of a friend, family member, a pet. Literally can come in all shapes and forms and sizes. It can be like anxiety, fear, doubt, depression, anything that causes you to not be in your most comfortable state, and that can cause you any type of stress where you're feeling some type of way. That's a stressor. And we all have different stressors in our lives, and I bet you can just think about it right now. Can identify some type of stressor that you're going through, or that you've been exposed to, or some type of situation, event that maybe you weren't prepared for, or maybe you expected but you didn't expect to feel this way, and you're just kind of going through it, and just kind of going through the emotions and just taking it day by day. And that's great. That's life. And that's the whole reason we're put on this earth, is just to take every day as a learning experience, and just kind of go through this journey of life and learn, and just try to become the best version of ourselves. And it's so important that we are aware of these stressors in our lives, and being able to identify them, and which way they're going to come and from where. And if not being able to identify them because it was so out of the blue, or so urgent, or so sudden, we need to be able to have a strategy to respond. Because it doesn't matter, like, life isn't about what happens to you. Life is it's basically about how you respond to things. And there's a quote that I think it was like in one of the Rocky movies. It's like about winning, and it's like life can hit you down, and it's not about if you stay down, it's about getting up and hitting it back, and just fighting it back. Don't quote me on that, but I know, and I see the scene in my head right now. I can see it in front of me. But and it's really important that we understand that and value that it doesn't matter what ends up happening to us. That does not define us. Like I talked about in the previous episode, our present is not our future, and it's okay to be the way you are, but it's just not okay to stay that way. But I think, going off of last week's topic, it's important for us to be able to identify these stressors, and just kind of strategize a plan in response to these things. And that's kind of how I talked about in the previous episode as well. I just kind of live my life. I have a to-do list, and backup plans, this. And if I don't get to this by then I'm gonna switch it to this. And I don't expect everyone to be as Sally like I mentioned in the previous episode, like myself, but it just gives me a more a sense of I have more control over my life. No matter what happens, I'm able to look at it and kind of jot it down and be no, this is what's gonna happen because this happened, or this event occurred, or this situation suddenly came up, and I'm not gonna be able to do this and this, but I can fit this into tomorrow, the next day, or stuff like that. And I'm just that's the way I like to strategize my plan, just to be able to more efficiently respond and expect when these stresses affect our lives. And sometimes we can't expect these things because it's an ongoing thing, and sometimes we're just in a situation, and that's when it's tough. But with all those stresses, I kind of wanted to compare it to certain exposures of stressors on the body that require an appropriate response to be able to return to this state of homeostasis. And I wanted to compare it to ice baths, which if you saw on my TikTok and my Instagram, I had posted some videos of me standing outside because we had got a ton of snow here in Massachusetts. And especially in my area that I live, there was so much snow, and I took the morning. The first thing I did was I took advantage of it, and I just kind of went outside, went on the porch, and I just went, no shirt, no shoes, no socks, and just went out there and just stood there and really exposed myself to this stressor. And my feet felt like I was walking on ice, just because the snow is with the pressure I was putting on the snow, it was just kind of getting harder and more solidifying. And it felt like there was literally ice on my feet. And so I was kind of moving them around and just kind of forcing them to stay. But in response to that stressor, it's the initial shock is the worst part. The initial shock is always the worst part. When you go into an ice plunge, an ice bath, or even when you take a cold shower, that's something I've implemented in my life, where the last sometimes 30 seconds to 2-3 minutes, sometimes my whole shower is just a cold shower. And as much as I loved hot showers, now I can't even kind of really be in a hot shower. But the feeling that I get after going through a cold shower, or just going through those last 30 seconds of my shower with like cold water, is like such an amazing feeling, and I highly recommend it to anyone who, like, so like safety, no, I'm no doctor, but like if you shouldn't able to, because you have like any issues with like heart issues or any type of stuff, like, you should definitely check in. But that's something that I highly recommend to anyone who feels like they're capable of doing it, and just kind of like putting yourself through that and just kind of experiencing it. And little by little, like, you start out warm, and then, like, as you go on, like, days, you start like dropping a little more. Like, your body's gonna end up building a certain tolerance to this temperature, this water temperature. And I thought it was huge to identify that the initial shock is the worst part. But once you get through that initial shock, you feel like you can stay there forever. And that's why I'm so looking forward to getting this ice bath and putting it on my balcony, because it's going to be a huge way to really callous the mind and adapt the mind and kind of train the mind and the body, just to be like, hey, like, even though you're put in this situation, whether it's by choice or not, you have the ability to calm yourself down and to really think about things and be aware of what's going on, and just kind of find a way, whether it be thoughts or any strategies, or just body responses, to bring yourself back to a comfortable state where you are able to be in that situation for a longer period of time. And that initial shock, though, it's just kind of the body responding to this sudden event, this sudden stressor. But when you begin to breathe and you really begin to calm yourself down, and you begin to breathe, and you start taking these deep breaths and just take in, like, in and out, and just kind of like little by little, like, calming yourself down. Every time I see someone who goes through an ice plunge, and their initial response, the moment they like begin to breathe, I can tell. I'm like, okay, now you can tell that person can stay there, because now they're getting comfortable. As uncomfortable as the situation is, because the body's adapting and it's creating this tolerance. And by you breathing, the biological response to the body being exposed to these cold temperatures is actually vasodilation, I believe. And it's the body in response begins to flow more and produce more blood, and flow more blood into the more essential and more important areas, like whether it be the organs, or like, a certain like limbs. And that's the body just knows in response. It just knows which areas are more important and more essential, and it begins to flow this blood. And it's by you breathing and just kind of concentrating, calming down the mind, and just concentrating on your breath and the flow of blood in your body, you're able to send and tell the body to like send more blood to this area, because now you're in agreement with your mind and your body that this area is being most affected. So let me in response help the body, and in kind of responding to this stimulus and to these stressors, and bringing the body back to a state of homeostasis. So, and the same thing comes when it's the body exposed to heat temperatures and like overheating. The body begins to vasoconstrict, and it begins to limit the amount of like blood flow, because the body's trying to get the temperatures to go down, because obviously with blood comes like also like internal body temperature regulations. The body begins to limit the amount of like blood flow going to the body, because it's trying to keep the temperature down and bring the body and the internal body temperature down. And it's the same thing. You, by being able to breathe in these situations and just kind of calm yourself down and allow the body to respond in the way that it has to respond, because the body's just in its DNA. It knows that this is what it has to do. So with that, since our body knows exactly what it has to do in response to these stressors and this stimulus, why do we, when it comes to our lives, don't know how to respond appropriately and properly to the situations at hand, even though sometimes we're aware of the stressors that we have in our lives, and we're aware of the situations that we're going through, but we decide to do the complete opposite? Because the one thing, the difference between us and the body is that we have emotions. Obviously we go through the emotions, but sometimes we have to like put these emotions aside And I'm not saying that, obviously the best thing to do is kind of like deal with those emotions and face them head on and just kind of feel how you feel and validate why you feel the way you feel and find the reason why you feel the way you feel and solve that problem. But with that, why can't we respond the way the body responds instantly, that it knows it has to begin to take these measures and these strategies to cope with the environment that it's been exposed to and the stresses that it's in, and that it's the environment that it's in and the stresses that it's exposed to. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today, because we can compare heat stresses in our life and exposure to heat as like just being overwhelmed. And that happens to all of us. Like, it's life, and this is like, how it is. And some of us have really busy lives. Some of us have tough lives. Some have gone through stuff where now they made it out and it's easier. Some are actually going through it right now. And, life can be overwhelming. You can you have to like go to work. You have to wake up in the morning. You have to get the kids ready. Like, not saying I have kids, but I'm just saying like anyone listening who possibly like has kids, you have to get the kids ready. You have to go to work. You have to come home. You have to pick them up. You have to school. You have to cook. You have to get them ready, the stuff ready for school for the next day. You got to help them with homework. Some of us who don't, like, I get ready in the morning to go to the gym, go to work, come home, have to cook, work on any project that I have going on, or trying to have a social life, get ready to do it again. And we're doing this 5 days a week sometimes, and it is not easy. But even there's other factors like we can go ahead and talk about. Like, some people might be like overwhelmed with school. There's some people who do full-time school, full-time work, and like I was someone who did that for like a year or two in my college, when I was in my college years, in my junior and senior year. And it is not easy. Like, I had no social life. Like, I would just go work 40 hours a week and also be a full-time college student, taking about 4 or 5 courses and some labs, and I had no time. And I remember I would get so stressed out, and I would just like, just be by myself in my room trying to get all this done. And I would just basically eat, sleep, go to school, and go to work. And I know there's a lot of people do that. I know there's a lot of people who even fit like gym time and that type of stuff, and I wouldn't even hit the gym. Like, I was running, but I wasn't like hitting the gym because I didn't have time for it. And there's some people who are some hardworking people out there. Like, some people are like single mothers, single fathers, and they have to worry about all these other things and take care of this like this human being or their family, and worry about themselves, and then worry about other people around them. And maybe you have like a loved one who's sick, or a parent who's sick, or like, someone who had an accident. They're going through something, and it's like it's really important that we understand and identify which areas in our life are we being exposed to a certain stressor. And being able to identify is the first step to just being able to respond, because the body knows that when there's something that's it's foreign, it's not supposed to be there, it just kind of identifies and starts attacking it. And that's the first step to us being able to respond and to like return to this state of homeostasis in our lives. And when it comes to cold exposure, there's also so many things. Sometimes we have like, seasonal depression. Us in Massachusetts, it's a very common thing, especially because our winter lasts like 6-7 months sometimes, and a lot of people like kind of go through those stages and go through those emotions because of the weather, and that has a huge impact on people, and that's just a normal thing on their moods. Some people, like going through depressive states or have depression. Some people have anxiety. Some people, they have like a low self-esteem. Some people like maybe have like the most confidence, and that's okay, because like I said, your present is not your future, and the situation you're in does not define you. The way you respond to this situation, you decide to take action, and what you're going to do with your life starting tomorrow, starting today, is really what's going to define you. It's going to set up your story for a nice, successful story, and so you're able to set the example to help other people because you went through it. And yeah, that's like when it comes to these heat and these cold exposures, we can kind of apply these things in our life where like sometimes we're just in a low state and we're just going through a winter, and we just don't see the summer coming around. We don't see the winter ever ending. And it's like sometimes we lose hope, we lose faith, because we're not able to see what's on the other side and see the outcome to this journey or this winter. And same thing with the heat. Sometimes we're going through a desert and we're just overwhelmed, and we just feel there's all this pressure, and we just don't know what to do, and we're just kind of dragging along. But the most important part of being able to go through these things is being able to respond. Even if it took you a second to, maybe took you a day or two, maybe took you a week, month, or a year, you're still and I mentioned in the previous like episode, if tomorrow's going to come and the future's going to come anyways, and you're going to see yourself, in 3 years still in the same situation, might as well just take those 3 years to work on yourself and change the outcome, because the 3 years are going to come while you're here, So that's kind of the stuff I wanted to talk about and compare those stresses into our lives with like sauna and heat exposure and ice baths to just kind of what we go through on a day-to-day basis. And the definition of thermoregulation, which is exactly what the body does in response to these stressors, is a biological mechanism responsible for maintaining the body at an optimal and functional internal temperature. And the reason it's so important that the body has this ability to be able to thermoregulate is because an individual that cannot regulate that temperature, they can either overheat or drop to very low internal body temperatures, which can result in either hyper or hypothermia, which are life-threatening issues and events. And it's the same thing in our lives. Like, no matter what we're going through, like if we're not able to fix this and respond, and we're not taking the initiative to respond, then it's essentially a life-threatening situation that we're going through, because it's a life-altering, it's a life-adjusting situation. And our life can either, depending on how we respond to the situation, our life can either take a turn for the better or for the worse. And it's tough, because sometimes when you're in the situation, you really don't see it. But when you take the action and you make the adjustments and you strategize and create a plan into how to respond to these things, is the most efficient way and the easiest way and the fastest way you're going to be able to get out these situations. But here's the thing that we need to establish, and I was talking about these in my videos that I post on my social medias, but we need to establish non-negotiables. Because a lot of people say they're doing this and this, but when a tough time comes around, they're hitting the gym, they're running, they're eating good, they're reading, they're meditating, they're waking up earlier, they're going to sleep, they're having setting a appropriate bedtime where they're able to get enough sleep to be rested for the next day and be energized. It's like the moment these stresses come into our lives, we start to drop these things, and that's where the problem is. Because we have to identify and create and establish non-negotiables in our life, which are going to be pillars in our life to hold us up or keep us down whenever we're feeling the pressure and the heat starts to rise and someone raises the temperature, or where someone drops the temperature and we're starting to go through these winters and going, and dropping to a certain low. And it's only these non-negotiables that are going to be able to keep us up, because basically the non-negotiables, if you think about it, the best way to kind of put it is that when you think of your most ideal state, you think about the most comfortable time or your happiest times, and you think about the life that you were living then and what you were doing then, and what your day-to-day looked like, and you're able to identify. It's okay, I woke up, I went to school, I woke up, went to work, I woke up and I went to the gym, I did yoga, I stretched, I meditated, I did affirmations, I went to work, came home, I was eating right, I was hanging out with my friends, or I wasn't hanging out with these certain friends, or I was with these certain family members, or I wasn't around these certain family members, I was in this relationship, or I wasn't in this relationship. And this is kind of how my day looked like. And you think about the ideal time that you lived in. Obviously, to a certain extent, there's some things that we can't go back and do, or go back and be with for X and Y reasons. But when we look at these at this ideal state and our most happiest and most comfortable state that we were in, essentially you can kind of call that a state of homeostasis in our lives. And when you identify those things that you were doing that made you the happiest and made you feel the best, when you identify those things and you establish them as non-negotiables, and you begin to introduce them into your life, and begin to reintroduce them into your life, and to begin to make it a habit and part of your routine, to the point where when situations arise or stresses come into our lives, I know if I feel a certain way, I'm gonna go hit the gym. I know I'm gonna go for a run. If I'm feeling a certain way where I feel like I'm a little too stressed, and sometimes I'm a little kind of like overwhelmed or maybe anxious, I go for a run, because that's how my body, just being able to run and just kind of escape and just clear my mind, just focusing on the next step and what's in front of me. That's the best way I'd respond to this specific stressor, which you kind of like put it in a way like it's like, like overheating or just like feeling overwhelmed and the temperature being risen in my body and in my life. But when I'm feeling like kind of down, sometimes like to get amped, like, I just want to blast music in the gym or blast music in my ears and just kind of go lift some heavy weights, basically. And that's not the response for everyone, but obviously that's kind of what it is for me, or what I've established it to be, a non-negotiable in the past year or so, or honestly, probably most consistently in the last like maybe 6 months. And it was because I knew how I felt when I wasn't doing these things and I was exposed to these situations. And then when I began to reintroduce these things into my routine, and I began to create these things and establish things as non-negotiables, I started seeing that the problem that I was going through in the situation I was going through wasn't as stressful, or my life wasn't as low as I thought it was, because these things gave me the satisfaction that I needed, and just kind of the confidence and the ego boost in being able to be, sure, and just kind of reassure myself that things were going to be okay. And it really, those things were things that calmed my mind down and brought my confidence up to the point where I knew that everything was going to be okay, and I just had to strategize and take on these plans. Sometimes like I'll start the day with going to the gym or going for a run, and then I have my day planned out where I'm like, okay, like I was pretty stressed out about this, but this is how I'm going to tackle it, and this is how I'm going to approach it, and everything's going to be okay. And then I get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, I have so much time that I didn't realize, or I was kind of like overwhelmed by this or kind of stressing this out when I probably didn't need to do it. And obviously everyone has different situations compared to mine, but it is so important to establish and kind of create these non-negotiables, or reintroduce these non-negotiables into our lives, where no matter how we're feeling the ups and downs, our body is always going to be able to readjust and just kind of like maintain a certain balance, where things might seem scary or might seem like everything's kind of like shaky and you don't like, nothing's very established, but these specific things that are pillars are going to hold up our lives, and just kind of like through the shaking and like the earthquake or whatever, like, kind of like way you want to compare it to, that we're experiencing in our lives, these things are going to maintain us afloat and maintain us balanced and back to like our most comfortable state. And through having these non-negotiables and these pillars and responding to a situation and making out of a situation, our body's going to create a new state of homeostasis. And maybe along the way you learn something about yourself that you didn't know, but these things helped you, and maybe like something that you had as a non-negotiable branch out to something else, that maybe that was something that makes you even happier, or even another pillar, another non-negotiable in your life, and you become a stronger and better version of ourselves after the situation, after the fact of the matter, because we decided to stick to our plan and stick to what we know best, and everything else is just going to rock the boat. But we know, as long as we sit this certain way, or we wake up and live our lives a certain ways, we approach life a certain way, or we begin and end our days with certain things, or we're around certain people, or or not being around certain people, it's only through exposing ourselves to these situations and being open and confident and facing these situations that we are going to be able to grow and improve. And sometimes we don't feel confident and we don't feel comfortable going through these situations, and maybe we can be scared, and that's okay. But when you have these non-negotiables and you have these pillars and this foundation in your life that you've created to be who you are at your happiest state and living the life that you live at your happiest, is when we're able to respond, and everything else doesn't seem as scary because we're prepared, and sometimes we can kind of forget through the emotions, or we're going through the situations and we can kind of forget, or like, just not be aware that we're not doing these things. And when you sit down and you take a second to breathe and relax and just kind of focus your mind on what's being exposed and what's essentially kind of hurting you, or which areas of your life are hurting or being threatened, that we're able to do less or more of these things and focus on our other things, and focus our energy on these specific areas in our life that are being threatened or being attacked or being exposed, just like the body does, and be able to respond and overcome the situation. And I just think it's so important that we're able to be aware of these things and being able to realize how important having these things and these pillars and these non-negotiables in our life are to living a healthy and continuously growing mindset, where and positive mindset, which we're kind of spreading the positivity and reaffirming and reassuring ourselves that everything's going to be okay. And you're just gonna like go through it and just go through the day and live day by day, and like, this is what I usually do, this is what I'm gonna do, this is who I'm usually around, or this is the person I don't like being around, so I'm not gonna do that. And I just think that we all can deviate from that path, and that's just part of life. But it's really important to really establish this foundation in our life, where no matter how cold the winter can be and how lows our lows can be, or no matter how overwhelming and how much pressure we can feel, it's only through really establishing the life you want to live and the factors that are part of the life you want to live, or the life you want to be present in at your happiest and most comfortable state, that we're able to respond, overcome, and flourish. Because it's not up to the stressor, it's not up to the winter, it's not up to the desert we're going through, it's not up to our toxic maybe relationship, it's not up to the overwhelming of being a single parent, or the ex that person that left us and hurt us, or that person that did damage to us, or that friend that did damage to us. It's not up to maybe the negativity that people are throwing at you, and it's not up to the overwhelmingness of your job and school and just life and bills and all these other things. It's not, they don't have the control over your life. It's not their decision, and they don't have the authority. It's only us, that we have the authority of our bodies. So just like it's in our DNA, it's up to us to take control and establish in the strategic DNA of our lives, establish that this is how it's going to be, and we're going to get there, and we're going to go through it, and it's going to be okay. And we have that authority to be able to take back control of our lives, and establish and live the life we want to live based off our most comfortable state of homeostasis. And whatever you want that state of homeostasis to be, it's only by putting yourself through stressors and learning and growing and learning from these experiences that you'll be able to reach that one day. But it's all a day by day process. It's all a journey. It's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen maybe a month or year. It might not happen after the first attempt. It might not happen after the 5th, the 6th, or 10th attempt. But at the end of the day, just having that solidified foundation and that base that we're building this house on, that no matter what waves come in, they're not going to knock down the house, because we built there's a verse in the Bible that says that the person built their house on the rock and not on the sand. So no matter when the waves came crashing in, the house stayed firm. And because its foundation was firm, because those things were solidified in our lives, and those things that we decided to identify as non-negotiables, whether it was the gym and getting our body right, whether it was getting our mind right, whether it was getting our relationships in order, or whether it was kind of establishing and setting the tone for the day before at night or in the morning. It's only those things that we're going to get able to get us through the storm and get us through the waves. And I kind of want to challenge everyone to kind of like identify those non-negotiables in their lives and pick 1 or 2 or 3 things, whether it comes to like body movement, or maybe going to the gym, or running, stretching, yoga, kickboxing, basketball, soccer, all these things. Find something that you're able to do at least once a day, something that's easier, or maybe even something like once a week. and have something to look forward to. Um, things such as breathing techniques, maybe taking a minute, just a minute, which won't kill you, which won't, it's out of 24 hours in a day, we take a minute or two just to kind of calm ourselves down and breathe. That's not going to kill us. We really just need to take the time to kind of get away from the situations and be present and just kind of focus on what you can do now. And I feel like breathing is such a huge thing that we forget to do sometimes. And maybe stuff with like mindful activity, maybe it's meditation, praying, puzzles, brain teasers, affirmations, like mindful thinking, all these things that we need to identify and just kind of be like, what do we do when we're at our happiest when it comes to these things, and how do we introduce them back into our lives? Or it can be body restoration, like shower temperatures or massages, sleep, the way we eat, our diet, what we're feeding our bodies to be able to have the energy to go through a day-to-day basis, being able to kind of, just go through life and just go through the day, because our energy is constantly being expended through our mind and through our body through these situations that we're going through. So with that little challenge, take 20 minutes, at least 3 days, for the week, just like, a weekly basis, because sometimes it's hard to introduce things like every single day, and it's better just kind of like baby steps into things, and take 20 minutes 3 days a week to start a mindful activity, whatever that may be, just kind of in the morning before bed, praying, meditating, any of that type of stuff. Take 20 minutes 3 days a week and identify what would be a factor that can help you get through these issues and in response to these stressors, and become a non-negotiable in your life. Or maybe you're doing this thing every day for 20 minutes or longer. Every day, name 3 things you're grateful for and 3 things that you want to accomplish that day. Wake up in the morning, name 3 things you're grateful for and that you have in your life, that you're blessed to have in your life, and just kind of like honored, whether it be like a person or a job or like a car or like a bed, like a roof over your head, food, all these type of things, and just kind of identify 3 things that you're grateful for, whether it be in the morning or before bed, and name 3 or identify 3 things that you want to accomplish in the day, and reevaluate those 3 things at night and see if you were able to accomplish those things, and if not, why, and how can I do it better next time, and maybe just go at it the next day. And I feel like those little wins is what's going to kind of get us through the situation, because when we don't feel like doing things and we feel like falling back into a slump, it's these little wins that's kind of like get us out of just the hole we're in, and just kind of like the situations we're going through, and evaluate those things in the morning and at night. And also, I want to challenge everyone to drink at least a gallon of water every day. And finally, last one, I want to challenge everyone to, if they're able to every shower that they take, or at least a shower a day, the last 30 seconds of the shower, to kind of drop the temperature a little. And when you're exposed to that situation, as maybe uncomfortable and at beginning the initial shock may be, just breathe and be there for 30 seconds. Or something that I went from 30 seconds and I upgraded to was 8 breaths from front side and back side, 8 breaths, deep breaths, and just being unexposed under the cold water and then shutting it off. It'll definitely go a long way. And I believe there's a study that shows that taking the last 30 seconds of your shower at least once a day with cold water has a 30% chance to increase your longevity by 30%. So definitely, like, even in the science, like it definitely helps in the biology of our bodies, and just like long term, not just like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but also like our physical health. And drink a gallon of water every day. Drink water. Like, it's only through drinking this water, like, and staying hydrated and keeping our energy levels up and our water reservoirs up, that we're going to be able to kind of feel good and not feel like we're down, and dehydrated, or cause a headache in our life, where we might change the mood of like what we're going to do for the day, and just kind of like our outlook on the positivity we had that day into a negative mindset, because we're not feeling too well. And I feel like that's so important. It's such a thing that we get so caught up in our lives and we just forget to drink water, which is literally like what our body is basically composed of, and our most essential like thing that we need in our lives. So yeah, that's kind of like what I wanted to talk about today. I appreciate everyone who came in and listened and tuned in, and whether it be your way to work or home or cooking, cleaning, showering. But if you have any feedback, definitely reach out. Definitely would love to hear some responses, and just kind of any ideas anyone has on like stuff they want to hear or they want to talk about, or any questions they have, and just kind of send, and that's something I can like, look into. But I'm definitely excited for this journey. I appreciate everyone who tunes in and listens. Share it with a friend if you think they're able to benefit from this. If there's something you didn't agree with, you can definitely feel more than free to reach out and just kind of have a discussion with me. And like, the more I learn, the more you learn, the more you learn, the more I learn, and just kind of vice versa. And this is a mutual relationship where I'm here to learn as much as you, so let's have a discussion. I appreciate everyone tuning in, and I really hope that people can really take the time to kind of go at these challenges on either it's a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis, and be able to identify these non-negotiables and establish these non-negotiables in our life and create the foundation that we want to have in our lives to live our best and most comfortable and most flourishing lives. So thank you, and this is intentionally living with Eli.